Tohir Saroso, a man from Nganjuk, East Java, was 40 years old at the time. Commonly known as Tohir, he was well known in the excavation industry. His name was quite recognized as an experienced excavator operator. He had operated various types of excavators, from crawler excavators to long-reach excavators. His remarkable skills led him to seek work in Kalimantan. I don't have much information about Tohir, but I read one piece of news mentioning that he was involved in a firearm possession case in 2012. However, due to his expertise in operating heavy machinery, particularly excavators, Tohir later worked in the mining industry in South Kalimantan, specifically in the industrial forest area of Tanah Bumbu. There, Tohir resumed his work as a heavy machinery operator. In short, he was hired by a company specializing in the rental of heavy equipment. The company was headed by Mr. Syaifullah, a quiet and hard-working man who ran the company well. Most of the heavy machinery he owned, mainly excavators, was rented out to companies involved in mining, the timber industry, and construction. Mr. Syafullah's presence as the owner of the heavy equipment provided solutions for his customers' needs. As a service provider, Mr. Syaifullah always offered the best service, guided by his life motto of upholding honesty and trust. It is unclear when he started his business, but it certainly became the economic backbone for his family and employees. In managing the company, Mr. Syaifullah was accompanied by his assistant, who was also his cousin, Mr. Anwar, aged 42. Mr. Anwar played a role in decision-making, especially when Mr. Syaifullah was focused on other tasks. He was also responsible for handling employee complaints and issues. One day, on June 18, 2013, at around 9 a.m., it was a regular workday at the workshop where Mr. Syafullah's excavators were parked in the Tanah Bumbu area. At that time, Tohir ordered two of his colleagues, Danu and Marwi, to start the engines of two excavators. The reason for this was that the two heavy machines were to be moved to a company that, according to Tohir, had already issued a work order or contract. Without asking many questions, Danu and Marwi started the machines, accompanied by the roar of the engines and the thin smoke rising. However, based on the fuel gauge, it was known that both excavators likely would not reach their destination because the fuel was running low. Tohir quickly ordered the machines to keep moving as fast as possible. Despite the low fuel condition, Marwi operated a Komatsu PC 200, while Tohir and Danu operated a Doosan 225. In short, after traveling a considerable distance from the workshop in Tanah Bumbu, the two machines arrived at a junction near PT Hutan Rindang Buana in the Sembamban area, South Kalimantan. Since the fuel was nearly depleted, the heavy equipment was parked at the road junction. Still on the same day, around 10 a.m., or 1 hour after the two heavy machines were rolled out by Tohir, Danu, Marwi, Mr. Anwar arrived at the workshop in Tanah Bumbu. Upon arriving at the location where the two excavators were supposed to be parked, he was shocked to find that they were missing. All he could see were tracks in the dirt leading out of the workshop. Naturally, Mr. Anwar became worried because, according to the schedule, the two excavators were supposed to be rented to a company in the Danau River area. He immediately began to investigate where the rented equipment had gone. After some inquiry, it was revealed where the operators had taken the machines. Mr. Anwar was very displeased and immediately contacted Mr. Syaifullah to report the situation. Upon hearing the report from Mr. Anwar, Mr. Syaifullah, who was in Martapura at the time, quickly headed to the workshop in Tanah Bumbu using a pickup truck. After several hours of travel, he finally arrived at the workshop and met with Mr. Anwar. In short, they found out that the excavator keys were with Marwi, who was at his home. They also learned that the two excavators had run out of fuel. After preparing several jerry cans of diesel fuel loaded into the back of the pickup truck, they set off toward Marwi's house around 5 p.m. Marwi's house was located in Sumber Aram village, in the Tanah Bumbu district, not far from the workshop. 10 minutes later, Mr. Anwar and Mr. Syaifullah arrived at Marwi's house. After waiting for a while, they met with Marwi, and Mr. Anwar immediately instructed Tohir and Danu to roll the two excavators back to Tanah Bumbu and then to the Danau River. Hearing this order, Tohir felt disappointed because, in his view, the company that had rented the two machines also needed them. However, because the rental contract was unknown to his superiors, the order was considered invalid, even though the renting company had agreed on the offered price. Shortly afterward, Mr. Anwar, Mr. Syaifullah, Tohir, and Danu left for the location where the excavators were parked. Only Danu sat in the back of the pickup truck. During the trip, Mr. Syaifullah, Mr. Anwar, and Tohir got into a heated argument inside the cabin of the truck. Mr. Syaifullah was very disappointed with the actions of his operator staff because this incident had caused him a loss of several million rupees. Tohir was asked to compensate for the loss, but he remained silent, not knowing what to say. Soon after, Tohir decided to move to the back of the truck and sit with Danu. This is where the problem began. Feeling frustrated, Tohir approached Danu and angrily said, "That devil of a boss!" Danu said nothing in response. Not long after, they arrived at the location where the two heavy machines were parked. All passengers immediately got out and refilled the empty fuel tanks. Each excavator received 3 jerry cans of diesel, which was considered enough to make the trip back to the workshop. After Tohir and Danu finished refueling, Tohir approached Mr. Anwar and said, "Sir, can I still proceed with this work order?" In an emotional tone, Mr. Anwar replied, "No, you can't. Start the engine quickly and roll the equipment back to the workshop." Tohir, feeling extremely frustrated, was overwhelmed by blinding emotions. He then drove his excavator closer to the Mazda pickup truck, where Mr. Syaifullah and Mr. Anwar were sitting. Unexpectedly, Tohir swung the bucket of the Komatsu excavator and hit the rear of the truck. The vehicle immediately stopped, and neither of his two bosses, Mr. Syaifullah and Mr. Anwar, had time to escape. Still consumed by emotion, Tohir swung the bucket again, this time targeting the left side of the truck's cabin, then the right, smashing the doors. Not satisfied with that, he also aimed the bucket at the engine, ripping it apart. The sound of the engine, the horn, and all noises from within the truck ceased entirely. After ensuring there were no signs of life from the truck, Tohir ordered Danu to clean up the scattered debris. Tohir then lifted the wrecked truck and moved it about 50 meters into the nearby bushes. There, Tohir dug a large hole to bury the truck along with the victims inside. Soon after, the truck was buried under the soil. Shocked, Danu remained silent and completed the task of clearing the debris. That night, his emotions were unleashed. The next day, on June 19, 2013, Tohir returned to Marwi's house and asked him to roll the 2 heavy machines to the rental company as per Tohir's recommendation. Marwi hesitated because Mr. Anwar hadn't approved it, but Tohir assured him the boss already gave permission. Finally, they rolled the 2 machines to the designated location and then returned to their respective homes. Not wanting to take any chances, Tohir immediately left Kalimantan and went back to his hometown. This case came to light after a missing persons report was filed by Mr. Syaifullah. An investigation followed, involving Marwi, who were the last to interact with the victims. It didn't take long before they discovered the location where the 2 heavy machines were parked, as well as a suspicious mound of earth in the industrial forest area. The police grew suspicious and began digging up the mound of soil with the help of another excavator. As expected, within the mound, they found evidence of the crime involving Tohir Suroso, along with the victims. Suspicion immediately fell on Tohir and Danu, who were the last people seen with the victims. Not long after the investigation began, Danu was arrested at his home in South Kalimantan. Based on Danu's confession, the police tracked down Tohir in Surabaya, where he was working as an excavator operator on an irrigation project. The police had to proceed with caution, fearing that Tohir might use the excavator to resist. However, upon realizing the police presence, Tohir opened the cabin door and jumped out, attempting to flee. Unfortunately, his escape was cut short after 2 shots struck his legs. Finally, Tohir was escorted back to Kalimantan to face justice. In a trial held at the court, the panel of judges sentenced Tohir Suroso to life imprisonment. What are your thoughts on this case, and what lessons can be learned? Write your answers in the comments, subscribe, and see you in the next case.